Hello and welcome to Investment Insight. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's break down what's happening in the markets today in a clear and simple way.
Sounds good. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, so today's deep dive is it's really about a massive, just game-changing move that the Trump administration just made regarding the USMCA.
Right, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. It's basically the rule book for all trade in North America.
Exactly. And based on recent analysis, on July 1st, 2026, the U.S. completely shocked the markets, like totally cut everyone off guard.
Oh, absolutely. It was a massive curveball.
Right. So during a joint review, the U.S. they flat out refused to give the trade agreement its standard 16-year extension.
Which is, that's a huge deal, but we really need to clarify what actually happened here because the context is super important.
Right.
The U.S. didn't rip up the agreement or just suddenly bring back tariffs overnight. The mechanics of the USMCA are still working today.
Okay, so it's not just dead in the water.
No. But what the United States Trade Representative Jamieson Greer announced is that they are putting the entire agreement on a 10-year countdown.
Wow. A 10-year countdown.
Yeah. So by refusing that 16-year extension, they've set up a potential expiration in 2036. And what that does is it triggers this incredibly tense annual review process.
Every single year.
Every single year. The rules of North American trade are now essentially back on the political negotiating table on an annual basis.
That is, that's wild. The way I was thinking about it when I was looking at the research, it's kind of like a housing situation.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, imagine you've been renting this commercial building for your business for years.
Yeah.
Right. And you go to your landlord expecting to sign your usual, stable long-term lease.
Right, because you need that stability to plan your business.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
need it to project your budget, hire staff, plan your inventory.
Right.
But your landlord just looks at you and refuses to sign it. Instead, they say, hey, we're putting you on a month-to-month agreement.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's incredibly stressful.
Right. Like, you aren't being evicted today. Your stuff is still inside, but suddenly you're just kept completely on edge, wondering if the rent is going to double next month, or if you'll just be kicked out entirely.
That is a perfect analogy because the U.S. basically just put its closest trading partners on a high-stress month-to-month lease.
But that leads me to a really big question. Like, isn't the whole point of a trade agreement to make things easy and stable for American businesses?
You would think so, yeah.
Why would the U.S. intentionally create this, permanent negotiation state that just causes massive headaches for everyone? It seems counterintuitive.
It does seem that way on the surface, but based on the data, it points to a really fundamental shift in how the administration views trade. They don't want traditional free trade anymore.
Okay, when you say traditional free trade.
The old model where the government's job was just to lower tariffs, step out of the way, and let the market find the cheapest way to make things.
Right, just making it frictionless.
Exactly. But now they've pivoted hard to what's called managed trade. They want to actively control and manage where supply chains are physically located.
Got it. So they're willing to accept some friction if it means they can control the outcome.
Precisely. And there are really three core reasons for this shift. First, they feel the original USMCA just hasn't done enough to shrink the trade deficit or bring actual manufacturing jobs back to American soil.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second?
Leverage. Pure leverage. If you grant a 16-year extension, you basically hand over your biggest stick. You lose your bargaining power.
Right, because everyone knows they're safe for a decade and a half.
Exactly. But with an annual review, the U.S. can constantly demand changes under the threat of letting the deal die. But the third reason is really the biggest one.
Let me guess. China.
You hit the nail on the head. The ultimate target here is blocking China.
Okay, so that brings us directly to, the main battlefield where this whole economic chess match is playing out, right? Mexico?
Mexico is ground zero for this, yes.
So reading through the analysis, I kept thinking about baking a cake.
Baking a cake. Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, so think about it like this. If I want to sell a cake in the U.S., but I buy super cheap flour and sugar and eggs from China, and then I ship all those ingredients to a kitchen in Mexico.
Right, okay.
And I hire someone there to just mix the batter and bake it. Is it a Mexican cake? Because the U.S. seems to be saying, absolutely not. That is a Chinese cake in disguise.
That is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And the U.S. is trying really aggressively to nail that back door completely shut.
So they're looking past the final kitchen, so to speak.
Yes. In trade terms, this is governed by what are called rules of origin. Customs doesn't just look at where the box was shipped from. They measure the percentage of the product's actual components and raw materials that originated in North America.
Oh, wow. So they really dig into the details.
They have to, because according to the research, Mexico is acting as a massive double-edged sword right now. On one hand, it's a fantastic nearshoring partner.
Nearshoring, meaning moving factories closer to home.
Right. Exactly. American companies moving out of Asia and into Mexico to shorten their supply chains. That's a good thing for the U.S. But the other edge of the sword is that Chinese companies are doing the exact same thing.
Oh, I see, to bypass the U.S. tariffs.
Exactly. They set up these assembly hubs in Mexico, bring in heavily subsidized cheap parts from Asia, do minimal assembly, and then claim it's made in Mexico to sell it tariff-free in the U.S.
That's a massive loophole.
It's a huge vulnerability, and it's so urgent that the USTR and Mexico's economy minister, Marcelo Ebrard, are actually tackling it right now. They scheduled a third bilateral negotiation for the week of July 20th in Mexico City.
Wow, so this is happening as we speak. What are they trying to do?
They want to strictly enforce those rules of origin and implement strong anti-dumping measures. Basically, the U.S. is demanding Mexico help block these cheap Chinese parts before they even get assembled.
So thinking about our listener here, like, if you're an everyday investor, this totally changes how you look at companies. Just hearing a company say, oh, we have a new factory in Mexico, that isn't an automatic win anymore.
Not at all. Because if that Mexican factory is just relying on cheap Asian parts, it's a huge regulatory risk. The real value for investors now is in true end-to-end North American production.
Right, the origin structure is what actually matters.
Exactly. But there is a catch, and it brings us to the most complicated industry in all of this.
The automotive industry, right? The cars we drive every day.
Yep. Cars are the absolute center of this clash.
Which makes sense. I mean, a car isn't just a cake with 3 ingredients. It's tens of thousands of parts. But here is my pushback on this whole thing.
Oh, for it.
If the U.S. forces car companies to use only North American steel and North American electronics and parts, won't that make cars wildly expensive for the average consumer? Like, we want American jobs, sure, but we also want to be able to afford a Honda Civic, you know? How does that balance out?
That is the million-dollar question right there, or I guess the trillion-dollar question, because the auto supply chain currently crosses borders multiple times before a car is finished.
Right. An engine built here, wiring done there.
Exactly. And the data confirms this is the biggest friction point. Automakers like Nissan have already warned the administration about this.
Oh, really? What did they say?
They explicitly warned that overly strict demands for U.S.-made content will severely hurt their manufacturing competitiveness and, yes, inevitably drive up consumer prices.
Man. And that's just for regular gas-powered cars.
Right. When you look at electric vehicles, the EVs, the complexity just goes off the charts.
Because of the batteries.
Exactly. An EV is essentially a high-performance computer sitting on top of a chemical plant. And the supply chain for those batteries, the lithium, the graphite, the power semiconductors, it is still deeply, deeply tied to Asia.
So we physically can't just mandate a 100% North American EV tomorrow because the raw materials aren't all processed here.
No, we can't. Forcing a sudden separation would completely severely disrupt the cost structure of the EV market. It's a massive bottleneck.
Wow. Okay, so that's the southern border, the factory floor in Mexico. But we really can't ignore our northern neighbor in this deep dive, right? Canada?
No, absolutely not. Canada is a totally different strategic game.
Yeah, the analogy I keep coming back to is, if Mexico's the factory floor of North America, Canada feels like the hardware store and the grocery store.
I like that. That's a great way to look at it.
But from what the data shows, we're picking fights in those aisles, too. It's not all friendly.
Oh, there is plenty of friction with Canada. But it centers around totally different things. We're talking about disputes over agriculture, specifically dairy.
Oh, the Canadian dairy quota is right.
Exactly. Plus timber, various tariffs, and recently a lot of tension over digital taxes.
No, digital taxes. Like taxing tech companies.
Yeah, Canada implemented a tax structure that essentially targets the revenues of major American tech giants operating there.
Yeah.
And the U.S. views that as highly discriminatory.
Got it. So we are definitely playing hardball with them. But looking at the big picture, the U.S. kind of needs Canada, right? especially if the main goal is to block China.
We absolutely need them. The U.S. cannot afford to push Canada away completely. Remember the EV battery bottleneck we were just talking about?
Lithium and all those minerals.
Right. To reduce our reliance on Asia, the U.S. desperately needs access to Canada's hardware store. They have massive reserves of energy and critical minerals: oil, natural gas, uranium, nickel, lithium.
Stuff we physically do not have enough of domestically.
Exactly. So what you can expect with Canada are highly targeted, sector-by-sector fights, surgical strikes, rather than a complete breakdown of trade, because we need their resources too much.
Okay, so bringing this all together, we've got these annual fights lined up with Mexico over factories and Canada over dairy and tech taxes. What does this institutionalized uncertainty actually mean for the everyday economy?
It means we are entering the era of the policy risk premium.
Okay, break that down for me. Like, if I'm a CEO and I want to build a massive billion-dollar battery plant in Ohio, how do I even plan my 10-year budget if the rules of the game might change every single July?
You've hit on the exact problem. Corporate investments, what we call CapEx, take 5 to 10 years to pay off.
Right, you don't build a factory overnight.
No, you don't. So when trade rules start changing annually, companies demand a higher premium for taking on that risk. They run the math, and if the uncertainty is too high, they just delay building altogether.
Wow. So by trying to force companies to build here, the uncertainty is actually scaring the money away.
In many cases, yes. The data shows this really clearly. The National Association of Manufacturers, or NAM, and their CEO, Jay Timmons, they actually support the USMCA's goal of fighting Chinese trade practices.
Okay, so they agree with the why.
Yes. They are fully on board with protecting American manufacturing. But they want the agreement improved, not constantly threatened. Because this annual political drama, it kills long-term investment.
That makes total sense. They want a better lease, but they still want a long-term lease.
Exactly. You can't plan a billion-dollar factory on a month-to-month lease.
So for you listening to this right now, the major takeaway is that the era of buying into a company just because of its sales region is over. You really have to look at its origin structure.
Absolutely. The companies that source locally, they are going to be this massive competitive moat. And those relying on cheap overseas parts, they're going to face really severe regulatory risks.
Well, to wrap things up for today's deep dive, it seems pretty clear the USMCA isn't dead. But the era of easy, set-it-and-forget-it free trade, that is officially over.
Yeah, it's in the rearview mirror.
We have fully entered an era of constant high-stakes negotiation to protect American manufacturing. It's messy, it's complicated, but it is the new reality of the market. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button.
But before you go, we want to leave you with one final thought to kind of mull over on your own.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
We've spent this whole time talking about how the U.S. is turning its trade agreements into these strict members-only clubs, right, to block out China.
Right, building a fortress.
But if this works, how long until other global economic blocs, like the European Union, start doing the exact same thing to us?
Wow. Yeah. Are we looking at the end of global free trade altogether? Just
Yeah.
a future of isolated, heavily armed trade fortresses? Definitely something to think about.
Thanks for listening.